Hello, everyone on Facebook, YouTube. How are you? It is 2 p.m. and it is time for Beyond the Steps. We are so very excited to be with you today. As you can see, we have music, y'all. We had an intro video. We are coming up here. We are so very excited to have Kristin, Deiss, and Michelle Loucadoux with us from Danscend, and we're going to talk about how we can help our dancers cope with stress. Thank you so much for joining us. I see you logging on. While you are logging on, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. No matter what platform you're on, we want this information to go as far and wide as possible. And this is a very important topic because, as you know, we are all stressed to the max. So without further ado, I want us to get started. Bree, can you tell us who we have with us? You're on.
Kristin. Oh,
I got you.
we are excited to welcome back the fabulous Kristin Deiss and Michelle Loucadoux of Danscend. Kristin is a dancer, choreographer, educator, originally from Philly, where she received her dance training at the Rock School of Dance. Shout out to the Rock School of the Pennsylvania Ballet, I should say, before attending the School of American Ballet as well as the Miami City Ballet. She's also a certified yoga teacher through Mind Body Dancer program, a Reiki master, integrated energy practitioner. She's currently the chair of the commercial dance department at Husson College in Los Angeles, formerly Studio School. Kristin's also the co-founder of Danscend, which is a fabulous organization that provides mental health resources for dancers. Kristin, welcome back. And we also have Michelle. Yes, we're so pumped. I love having you guys. This is like your third time, I think, with us,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
this is great to have you back. Michelle Loucadoux has been a professional dancer and educator for over 30 years. She danced on Broadway and ballet companies, on film and in television, and has traveled the world empowering young dance artists. Michelle is a published author, has a master's degree in business, is passionate about creating a space for more compassionate and inclusive dance community. We can really get behind that. And of course, she is also a co-founder of Danscend. Both of you, welcome. Thank you so much for sharing your Friday afternoon with us.
Thank you for having us.
To be here. Yeah, it's so much fun to see how Danscend has grown over the last couple of years. I know when we first had you on, you had just started. And how has that been growing Danscend, and how has it been received in the community for you guys?
Oh my gosh, it's been crazy. It's been a little bit overwhelming, but really awesome. I mean, I don't think we realized uh, how much need there was, and that I mean, we knew it was important, but we put like one Facebook post up on like 3 different dance teacher Facebook groups, and we had over 1,000 responses in 12 hours. We were just like typing and typing. We were like, ah. So it's been amazing, but it's also like been really awesome to just meet dance schools from around the world. Literally, like we'll Zoom with kids in, Australia, and then, kids in UK and kids in Milwaukee. So it's been really, really awesome. But it's been a lot of work.
That it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And I will say that ever since you guys started Danscend, I'm hearing so many, like the topic of mental health for performance athletes is just it's such a hot button topic now. We hear it constantly, right? So I think the work you're doing is resonating in the fact that we're having conversations about it, which is miles ahead of where we were before, I think. Do you agree with that?
100%. I mean, I don't even think I ever heard the term mental health uttered in a dance space almost my entire life.
And it's so nice that we're openly having those conversations. And it's now, I mean, we're hearing from studio directors that are reaching out that they're journaling, that they're having mental health conversations with their students and their parents. Like this is something that's weaving its way in. So I know I'm really encouraged. I hope you guys are seeing the same thing. But we have, we're starting today to talk about how can we help dancers cope with stress. How do we help performance athletes cope with stress? Whether you're a dance educator or you're a coach of another sport, this is a great conversation. So we want you all to chime in throughout this conversation. Michelle and Kristin are here to answer any questions you have. So pop those in and let's get started, Melissa.
Yes, I want to start with something that I hear constantly all the time. I feel like every class from children as young as 5 years old. I am so stressed. Oh my gosh. I look at a 5-year-old and I'm like, what do you know about stress? Child, you get fed, you have clothes, you go to school, those types of things. I feel like the word stress is thrown around a lot and kind of haphazard, like, I'm so stressed. This is stressful. Oh my gosh. But stress is an actual really serious problem, right? Like it can cause some serious issues. Either one of
That
you can
is
take
correct. Yeah, I mean, well, first, there's so many things I want to say about this. A 5-year-old can be stressed out. And let me tell you why. Stress is, we can call it contagious. There have been studies that have shown that educators, when they come in and they self-identify as burnt out, so we know that they're stressed, they'll come in and researchers measure the levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which are the two hormones that are pumped through our system when we perceive a threat, right? When we are stressed out. They measure those hormones in students of teachers who are burnt out, and those levels are way higher than in students who educators are saying they're not stressed. So that 5-year-old, if surrounded by stressed out people like mom and dad or brother and sister or babysitter or whoever it is, it's definitely a problem and it's contagious, and that 5-year-old can be 100% stressed.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, 5-year-olds and our young folks, they, are you hearing an echo when I talk? Yeah.
Phone volumes are down.
Yeah,
Yes.
my
volume is down.
Hmm.
Do you hear me now? Am I still echoing?
You are echoing a little bit. Do you have your headphones plugged into your computer or phone?
Computer.
Just keep talking. Well, I'm going to mess with it a little bit.
Okay. But there's such a, in our society, in our culture, I believe that stress is something that's cool. Like, we're like, I'm so stressed, I'm so busy. And then we all kind of just, we're like, that becomes a badge of honor. And I think we need to change the way we talk about being stressed first, and then let's address the issue if it's still a thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's interesting to hear that you are confirming that little ones can be stressed, because I think what Melissa said is we often attribute that to kids that are older, right? That, little kids, like, it's just they don't know what they're feeling. They don't know what they're doing. We just have to learn how to spot that in a different way with younger kids. So what are some things that we want to focus on when we're talking about stress? What are some things I guess we want to look for when we're looking to spot stress in younger kids? Like, not the kind of stress that's like they're not getting their way, but something that's really causing emotional turmoil for them. How does that come out?
Yeah, I think stress is when we cannot cope with our daily lives, with the daily things that we experience. So if you see a young child who is quote unquote stressed over simple tasks that they do day in and day out, that's when it's a concern. Because like I said prior, stress comes from a perceived threat. What everyone perceives as a threat is different, right? Like I use this example all the time. Depending on my emotional state and my mental state, I could open the fridge and see that I'm out of yogurt, and that could stress me out. Like, that is a perceived threat in my brain in that moment, even though it's not really, but because of where I am mentally and emotionally, it might be. That is a normal part of life, that if I can't deal with running out of yogurt, if I can't cope, then that's stress. So if you're looking at a young child, you have to see whether they can deal with, the normal day in, day out tasks. And if they can't, then they are probably stressed. And stress can result in physical problems like eating issues, sleep issues, chronic inflammation, which can lead to pain. And it can also result in mental health issues like anxiety and depression if left unchecked. Now, I also want to note that stress is normal.
Mm-hmm.
And getting stressed out is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what we would call acute stress. If something happens to us and our hormones, go up, that's not a bad thing. That's human. That's the way that our body is designed. What's problematic is when those levels stay up and they don't come back down. And that's what's called chronic stress. And that's what leads to these issues.
So that kind of leads me into my next question of, we have different types of stress. So you just talked about the acute stress. That's when something happens to you that doesn't necessarily have to be a traumatic event, right? That could be anything that raises your cortisol levels.
Yeah, in a shortened amount of time.
Okay, in a shortened amount of time. And then what was it? It was acute and chronic? Was it
chronic? Chronic is when those levels stay high over a long period of time.
Over a long period of time. And this is just totally just from research and things that I have learned. When prolonged chronic stress, sometimes it can be hard to come down from prolonged chronic stress, even when the stressors are no longer there, right? Michelle, you're nodding your head like yes. So over a long period of time, being exposed to these chronic levels of stress can, I don't know what to call it, like have a long lasting effect, even once those stressors are removed.
Yeah. And long-term stress too is everywhere. It's when you turn on your phone, there's a 24/7 news cycle. Sometimes it can be social media, and it can be anything, right? It can be often things that we don't deal with that continue to bother us. So that's why, like you mentioned, journaling is so important to kind of figure out what is stressing us out or what is causing us to worry, and then deal with it rather than just letting it perpetuate.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think on a previous show, it might have been in season 1, we talked about, and I don't remember if it was with you guys or somebody else, we talked about eustress. That's the good stress. Yeah. Can we talk about that a little bit? The differences, what that means?
Eustress, there's 3 types of stress. The first is eustress, which is good stress. It's what you feel when you're falling in love, when you meet somebody that you admire. It's the stress that I felt when I got into an elevator at SAB and Mikhail Baryshnikov was in there.
Ooh.
And I was like 12 years old and was freaking out. That stress, and there's actually a level of stress that is great for performance, for athletic performance. And it helps us focus. It helps us block out things that are not going to help us. It actually helps us get complete control over our physical body and complete the task at hand. Now, what's difficult about achieving that eustress is that the level is different for every human being. So once those hormones tip just slightly, now we're in what's called distress, which is now the heart is racing uncontrollably. We can't catch our breath. Our limbs have sort of gone dead. We're shaking, things like that. So that's the negative form of stress. And then there's a third type of stress called eustress, which happens when we receive information that could potentially be stressful, but because it's not really connected to us, it doesn't have any real bearing on us.
Okay.
And, as dancers, we put ourselves under stress on a regular basis, right? So, it's not just a normal kind of thing. We don't just walk around and, have a job and go sit behind a computer. Like, we have to go on stage, often scantily clad, dancing together, doing very difficult things for hundreds, maybe thousands of people to watch us and potentially judge us or, rate us even. Like, you think of dance competitions. So, dancers, and there have been, a number of great, polls done by Minding the Gap. Dancers do suffer disproportionately from things that are related to stress, from anxiety, from anxiety over people looking at their bodies, which that's what we do in dance. So as awesome as dance is and as positive as it is for us and our mental wellness, there are also parts of it that can really lead to stress.
Question that I have now is there a way as a performer to use stress to your advantage? right? Because I think I can't remember what conversation it was. It might have been with you, Kristin. I cannot remember, but there was something that you were saying, like there's a certain amount of healthy stress, right? Like we can turn that into something positive, and there's some amount of stress that is good for us because we have to learn how to cope with that, but we can also use it in our art. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find because the level is so unique and different for everybody. And it's something that I think if you're experiencing anxiety over what you're doing, then that stress level is probably going to be pushed into the not so great categories. So I would say it's a lot of trial and error. It's different for everyone. It involves a lot of reflection, a lot of really thinking about what am I perceiving to be a threat? What do I feel anxious about? If it's more than just excitement, but I'm actually scared of something, sort of figuring out what that trigger is, and then trying to familiarize yourself with it, because there's a reason why you're scared of it. It's the unknown, it's the unfamiliar, right? So doing your best to familiarize. And once, I know you're going to ask us a little later down the line what instructors and educators can do to help their students sort of cope with stress. That's one of the tactics, and we'll sort of get into that later. But it is really important to know that when you feel butterflies in your stomach and you're excited to go out on stage, that's not a bad thing. The bad thing is if it impairs your ability to perform at your best. And once that occurs, you have to really start to think about why that is happening and ask a lot of questions and really do some self-reflection and observation.
So that's the distinction. That's is when it's impairing us from our day-to-day activities, when it's impairing us from being able to move forward in any capacity, that is the red flag. That's the problem. Stress is okay. It's when it gets to that impairment step that it goes south, right?
Yes.
And that's good for everybody to remember. Melissa, what were you going to say?
Yeah, question. So we talked about, okay, are you scared or are you excited? You know, when and let's go specifically to recital, when we get the 2 or 3-year-old that doesn't want to go on stage, and we drag them out there because their parents paid for a costume and granny's there, and we put them out there, and you know, a lot of us have had them end up in puddles, a lot of them lots of tears. Is that a harm? Like, is that stress or is that fear? Or are they
like,
really
can you Hail Mary your way out that? Is that traumatizing? Like,
what do you think as it relates to stress? I mean, clearly they're scared, but sometimes you have to push through, right? But is that too much of a push through?
I mean, I think it's important to with younger dancers, I think it's important to frame it first ahead of time. So there's 2 ways that you can really deal with a stressful situation. You can prepare for it ahead of time, or you can deal with it in the moment. With younger folks, I've found that like the more they know about what they're gonna experience, the better, right? So like the more we can couch it as like it's super exciting, you get to be the star, you get to like wear the sparkly outfit, that kind of thing, is fantastic. But you know, I think it's important too to have a debrief afterward, because you really don't want that kind of thing to be traumatic. So a young person doesn't know how they're going to feel on stage until after they try it. So, you know, if we say, hey, let's try it, and they try it once and then they walk off stage and they're like, that was awesome, right? That's great. Maybe they should continue to do it. But if a dancer is still like really feeling a negative impact from that experience, maybe that's something to look at. Maybe it's time to maybe take a year break, take a couple years break, and then, you know, take class and maybe don't even perform on stage, because it's kind of, you know, we force all of these dancers that are taking dance classes to perform on stage, but I don't necessarily think we have to, right? Like, why can't dancers just dance in class and then maybe not have to be on stage, you know? So
that's huge. That's a whole nother episode. That is another day, but like, Like there, yeah, I think we have this idea that we have to, if we put so much time into something, we have to compete. And I struggled with that as a director, even when I had kids coming to me who I thought had enormous amount of potential or who had worked so closely with. You want to see them like fulfill that and see that through, right? And sometimes they just don't have it in them anymore. They get burned out. I'm not going to compete anymore. And you just want to go, but why? Like, we've worked so hard to get you to this point. But it really, like, what I'm learning now is it's not up to us. We can't live that for them. They have to want to do it. And if something in them is saying, I just don't have the capacity for this, it needs to be okay for them to take class. And I think the problem for those kids is they're so well trained. Where do they go if they don't want to compete, but they're I guess they've outgrown rec, right? They've outgrown the kids that only do it for fun once a week. I think as studio directors, we have to normalize, like, where can they still get that training, but not have all the stress that comes with it. Those kids tend to not have a place to go, right? So I'd be interested, anybody out there listening, is there anything you do? Like, I overcame that as a director when I stopped fighting that by just saying, okay, you can apprentice. Like, you can apprentice company, which means you can take all the classes, but you're not competing, and you just get the training, but none of the competition aspect of it. And it worked really well for some people, and it was a really good answer. So I'd be interested to hear, what are you all doing out there in your athletics, your sports, your training, to accommodate those students who don't necessarily want the competitive aspect but need more training? And while we wait for those responses, I want to remind everybody out there, I'm Bree. This is Melissa. We are Beyond the Steps. Every week we're talking about issues that are affecting performance athletes, like racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, psychology, nutrition, and of course, dance, medicine, and science. We do this every Friday, where we chat with guest experts and dive into these topics. And we want to hear from you. So please, if you have any questions for Kristin Deiss or Michelle Loucadoux of Danscend, please pop them in the chat. Today, we're talking about how we can help performance athletes cope with stressors that are affecting them. We're talking about beyond the normal, butterflies in the stomach and nervousness that we get as performers. We're talking about the type of stress that impairs us and prohibits us from doing our day-to-day and living our day-to-day life. So pop those questions and comments in. Michelle and Kristin, I know that we've all been in places where you can feel the vibes when people around you are stressed out. Like, you can feel that so deep. It almost like permeates the air, right? So how important is environment and the mindset of the people around you, your surroundings, in coping with and managing stress? If you're stressed and you have a whole bunch of more individuals who are stressed around you, is that just gasoline on a fire?
Yes. Without, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Yes. Like, that is, I mean, I mentioned that study earlier about the educators who are stressed, and it shows up in their students, their hormone levels. So it's 100% contagious. It has a lot to do with the people that you surround yourself with. If everybody is stressed out, chances are you're going to be stressed out. And then if you're already stressed out, your stress is going to, like, blow up. And then everybody's going to start having issues coping with it, right? So I think it's so important for educators, especially for any adult, for support systems at home, for educators in the studio, to really step into the role of, I am managing not only this classroom full of kids and dancers, but I'm also helping them shape their mindset based off of how I walk in the room. And that's a lot of responsibility, and I know that. And that's not to say that you need to be perfect all the time, but if you're stressed out and you know you are, take a few deep breaths before you enter the space. Like, something super easy, super general, doesn't take a lot of time. Big inhales, long exhales, and reset before you walk in. I mean, so many of us are running in a space, myself included. I'm like, I'm late for class. and I'm running in, and then I'm like, there's not a second. I don't take a moment to reset before I walk in. And I think that that's really important, because what are we teaching our children or our students? We wouldn't want them to run onto stage like, I'm late for my call, and they're running from the dressing room and getting onto stage. We want them to have a moment to think about what they're about to do. So take that time and explain that that's what you're doing to your students, because they'll learn that from you.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I internalize my anxiety so much and tamp it down so much that when it comes out, and I'm noticing even with my own kids. So I have a point, but even with my own kids, when I'm stressed, the energy level in the house is just different. And, if we start our morning off rushed and frazzled, it's a bad energy to start the day. They feel that. So it's important, I think, as adults and educators and coaches to, even if you're late, it's better to reset before you walk in that door than to bring that into the room and risk it spiraling over the course of the next hour or hours that you're with those students. So it's so important. And I don't know how we fix that, because it is easy. It's like you said, it is so much easier said than done, right? Like, this, but in the moment, it's completely out of your control. It feels like.
Well, it's funny, like we think about it going out, right? We think about how we're impacting the dancers in our classrooms, but I know I don't think as much about the people in my life or the situations I put myself in that are impacting my stress level. So like there are some folks that I know that have that energy that make me feel like I need to have that energy too. So sometimes like I will just go to the bathroom and just sit down for like 5 minutes in between classes, and I'll just like sit down and I'll like breathe, and I'll just like try to like do some breathing exercises, try to release a little bit, because it does it kind of it builds up too.
What are some quick oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, the other thing too is, if we're only trying to relieve stress when we feel it, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. Because that is like, and I say it all the time because I just love it so much, that is like trying to learn how to swim while you're drowning. Like, that's not the time. Yes, it's a valiant effort, but that's not what's going to serve you the most. You need to get into a daily practice, a daily habit of doing something that cares for your mind. And that can be a whole lot of things for a whole lot of people. It can be a 5-minute meditation. It can be a 5-minute bullet journal in the morning. It can be a 5-minute gratitude journal in the evening. It could be a breathing exercise that you learn in yoga, or that you learn from Google. Honestly, Google breathing exercises and a ton will pop up. It can be a chat with somebody that you love, where you say, hey, do you have space right now for me to vent to you? I know I do that to Michelle all the time, and I probably should ask before I do it, but sometimes
I do it to Casey too. I'll call her and she'll think I'll be calling about something for business. And I'm like, do you have a minute? And that's like the dumbest question, because I know she doesn't have a minute really.
Right.
But I'm like, friend hat. I just need my friend right now, and we have those conversations all the time. I'm like, do you have a second? I just need to vent. It's so unproductive, but we have to take that time or else I'll explode. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And how many friends are going to say no?
You just said it too. It's so unproductive, because that's what we're made to believe. We're made to believe that taking care of ourselves first is not the best use of our time.
100% guilty.
So hard. Oh, same. And it's so hard to shift that and really believe it.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Ali Marca 77 on Instagram. Sorry if I said that wrong. Nervous system regulation and knowing yourself deeply, the body sends us messages. And yes, so true. Absolutely. It's whether or not we listen.
Right.
That it becomes a huge issue, right? Like,
I get messages all the time, and I just poop, and then eventually it'll be like, okay, well, you didn't
Yeah.
listen, so here you go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I'm in the
make
middle
you
of it
listen.
now. Yeah. When my body's having all kinds of crazy freakouts. I'm seeing doctors left and right for this, that, and the other because it's just been going for like 2 years nonstop and not taking care of myself. And so here we are, right? So
Right.
it catches up with you eventually. So I think these tips are great.
All right.
So
So
great.
in season one, or season one show, we talked. I want to say it was with Jackie Haas about the role that perfectionism plays in stress for performance athletes in particular. So, do you think the fallacy of being perfect, and I say fallacy because that's not possible, people. And it's not possible to be perfect. Is causing unnecessary stress in the dance community, specifically in the competitive dance world.
I mean, yes. So there's different types of perfectionism, and one of the biggest types of perfectionism that is on the rise is the type of perfectionism where we feel that we need to present ourselves as perfect to other people. Like we feel like other people need to see us as perfect, and I think obviously that's perpetuated by social media, by the images that we put into our eyes and our minds of these, perfect bodies, like perfect arabesques, perfect lives. Like, here's this beautiful family on the beach walking down the in khakis at the sunset. My kid's like vomiting on the cat. So I think we have gotten so used to the presentation of a perfect like life, a perfect everything, that we have normalized it. And that's what our brains do. The more we feed our brains of this is normal, the more we believe that that is normal, and then the further away we get from normal, and then we look in the mirror at ourselves and then we feel disappointed. um, so yes, absolutely. And it doesn't help that in dance we are striving for perfection, but we're never going to get there. Like Melissa said, like we are absolutely never going to get there. And I think some of the best art is dancers that are so passionate that they kind of fall down, and like they're messy but they are exciting, right? So I think one of the things that I like to stress in class too with my dancers who do kind of strive for um, uh, stale perfectionism is that it's not as exciting or fun as messy passion and trying new things. I think that's something that we can talk about in class to kind of counteract that the situations happening right now with social media.
And when you're
Thank you for that.
striving for perfect, everything is a perceived threat because, as you said, Melissa, it's a fallacy. You can't have a perfect day. You can't have a perfect body. You can't have perfect technique. You can't have a perfect performance. So everything can be perceived as a threat, which skyrockets our stress.
Yeah. I mean, and that's so true. Every comment, every time your teacher gives you a correction, every time somebody looks at you a little funny, you're like, oh, they're judging me. Oh my goodness. And that's just, and to back to the point that we had before of chronic stress over a long period of time, it's detrimental to you for an even longer period of time. So we definitely want to continue to work on eliminating this idea of being perfect, because it's not possible, not for adults, not for children, not for anybody. So we want to keep drilling that home. For those of you who are just joining us, we are here with Kristin, Deiss, and Michelle Loucadoux from Danscend about how we can help our performance athletes cope with stress. We've talked about all types of different stress, and all types of different ages. And if you are watching this episode, please drop your comments in the chat so these experts can answer live what it is that you want to know about stress. What are some things that you are seeing in your environment that you need help with? They are here for you. So please drop those comments and questions in the chat. Like, share, and subscribe based on what platform you're on. And we are going to go to the next segment. I think that's Bree. That is Bree. Did you have
Oh, no, I thought that was you, no? It is no okay. It's me. So yeah, and again, for those of you that are just joining, this is Michelle Loucadoux and Kristin Deiss of Danscend, and this is a mental health. It's an organization that provides mental health resources for dancers. You definitely want to check them out. They have some awesome resources that they're going to be providing at the end of this episode. So make sure you watch all the way to the end. What are? Let's start with Michelle. What are 1 to 2 coping strategies? And Michelle and her cat. Michelle and her friend the cat are here with us today. But Michelle, I have kids and a dog. You've got your cat with you. It's fine. What are 1 to 2 coping strategies that educators and coaches can build into their curriculum to help alleviate the stress that we're seeing with our students?
Yes. Well, the first thing that they can do is to provide these strategies to dancers when they're not in a stressful situation, right? So we want to learn them, practice them, and then when you're in the moment, you can be like, "Oh, remember this thing we did? I'll try this." One of my favorite coping strategies for stress and anxiety is called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. And I found out about this because my therapist did it with me when I was freaking out. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. Often our stress and our anxiety comes from worry about a perceived threat in the future, right? So it's that standing on the side of the stage, getting ready to go on when we feel it the most. So one of the best things we can do to alleviate those symptoms of anxiety and stress is to bring ourselves back to the present moment. So you simply go find 5 things that you can see and you name them one by one. So you look around, I can see my green light on my computer. I can see my calendar next to my desk. And you name them one by one and actually look at them. The next thing you do is 4 things that you can feel. I can feel my sweater. I can feel my earbuds in my ear. I can feel my socks around my ankles, my Apollo socks. I wear them all the time. My plantar fasciitis is so happy. And then 3 things that you can hear. So I hear the traffic outside. I hear my husband in the other room. So you have to stop and actually pay attention. And then you do next to 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste. So I can taste my coffee. Um, Simply doing that and running through those things helps you move away from worrying about the future, and it forces you to move into the present. It forces you to notice. What happens when we have a stress response is, we zero in on the perceived threat, right? And actually, our eyesight changes, our vision changes. If you've ever put portrait mode on your phone, that's kind of what happens. Like it closes in like a lens, and it's like perceived threat, do not perish, right? But everything else around that gets kind of blurry. So that is not conducive to pretty much anything, learning,
Right.
performing, anything. So what the 5-4-3-2-1 method does is it takes us out of that kind of perceived threat, zeroing in, and it opens our perception again to all of the parts of our world, to seeing everything around us and experiencing it. So that's
But
one.
I want to say we're directing this at performance athletes because that's what we do at Beyond the Steps. But really, like, I'm taking this in as a mother, as a wife, as a woman, as an entrepreneur as well, because so many, as you're talking, so many things that stress me out completely and cause complete mass anxiety have to do with things that haven't happened yet and things that I'm completely worried about that have not even happened, right? I'm worried it's going to happen, or I'm worried, how am I going to, this problem that I'm dealing with now is going to lead to this, and this. So this is a technique that really I can use in my day to day too.
I was listening to Seth Godin on a podcast last night, actually, and he had a quote that said, stress and no, he said anxiety is experiencing future failure in the present. So we don't
Oh my
want to
gosh. Yeah.
fail before we already even did it.
Wait, say that again, because I want to put that in the chat.
Oh, I don't know if it's an exact quote, but anxiety is experiencing future failure in the present.
Oh my gosh. That's big.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen. And it might not be as bad as you perceive it. And with me, I usually think it's way worse than it is, right? So,
But that's the
That's
thing is like you're thinking it's going to be a failure, and half the time I'm worried about something, it doesn't even go the way that I was fearing it would go, and then I was wasted all this energy on nothing, you know. So I love that you're saying this. I think it's applicable to so many people, just beyond the students and the athletes that we're talking about, the coaches, the educators, the parents, right? Like it's limitless in terms of who it can help. So
I
thank
was
you for
gonna
that.
I was gonna say that and my problem is I worry about it in the future, and then when it doesn't go that way and it goes better, I'm like, well, it went better because I was worried about it. Okay, that's not the way that works, Melissa. You didn't worry it into happening correctly. Like that's
We
not.
Yeah, we have some people on Instagram that are in agreement with all of us as well. They feel it too. So I think this is a very common pain point. Ali Lamarca 17 or 77 says every one of us is unique and special. It's how we express our passion, technique, heart, and what we have to give. And that's a great
Mhm.
point. And I have to give a shout out to our biggest fan, my dad. Anthony is on here as well. My dad watches every week religiously. He's a little late today, but
Uh-huh.
he is on nonetheless. Love you, Dad.
Yes.
I have to give the dad a shout out.
I saw a comment from Alice Liz 1012. Anticipatory anxiety is a big challenge. It definitely is. It's a big and it's a kind of a useless challenge. How do you anticipate all the bad stuff that's going to happen? But also, can't you anticipate the good stuff that's going to happen? Isn't that part of like visioning instead of
That's
kind
one
of
of the
We
things
never
that
do that. We
my
never do
friend
that. Yeah.
always asks me when I'm venting to her, my friend Lizzie, who is just wisdom in human form. And I call her like my Buddha. And I'm like venting to her and I'm like, all these things are going to go wrong. And she said, okay, I just want to, and she always says, I want you to take a moment, close your eyes. What if everything goes right? And I'm like, why don't I ever think of that on my
yeah,
Oh
own?
my
never.
God, you have Liz, you said it. I have a Casey. Casey's like the eternally, like she's always like it's gonna be great and it's gonna work. And I'm like, she's just the sun shines out of every crevice of her body. And I'm like,
Oh,
Why can't I be like
I'm
that?
not, that's not what, I'm not wired this way. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
I'm
everybody
not.
needs that friend, right?
I'm not. I
well,
tell
and
my husband all the time, if it goes right, I don't have to worry about it. That's not what I need to worry about. Who worries about what's going to go perfectly?
well, but what we focus on, what we focus on, we see, right? Like, so if we're like focusing on like maybe something wrong going on in the future or it being a not great experience, like our brain is looking for ways to validate that,
Mm,
and that's the same thing with positivity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can say this, I don't always practice it. So
Yeah, well, it's easier said than done. You know, we said that. So that's one coping strategy, just to recap, that educators and coaches can do to build this into your curriculum and help alleviate stress for your dancers or your
mhm,
students, your I guess whatever, your performance athlete, whoever
mhm,
you're dealing with, right?
mhm,
The 5 4 3 2 1 method, bring them back into the present moment, so we stop worrying about things that
mhm.
haven't happened yet and worrying
Exactly.
about future failures in our mind,
Mm.
right? So that's
That
a great
sounds like
one. 5 4 3 2 1.
a good way to begin class. We could actually begin class or open
Absolutely.
a competitive day with just start with that exercise, regardless of whether you feel like it's needed or not. It's probably needed for somebody. So that's a great thing for educators, coaches that are in direct contact. But what about our parents and the performance athletes? What can they do at home? I feel like this might open the door to that proactive work that Kristin was talking about a little earlier in the show. What are some things that they can do at home, coping strategies, before they even get to the studio?
oh, there's a ton. There's a ton. I would say first and foremost, make sure you're not stressed out when you when you try to help your person at home become less stressed. Take care of yourself first. And then there's a bunch of things you can do with your performance athlete. If they're stressed out about an upcoming event, talk it through with them. If you're able, drive them to the location so they can see at least the outside. I mean, I used to do that with auditions. I used to freak out about where am I going to park, and I would take the time to go drive and just figure that out. What we want to do is we want to remove as much of the unfamiliar as we possibly can. Ask them a lot of questions. Who do you think is going to be there? What would you do if you fell down? What would you do if you forgot something? What is the worst thing that could potentially happen, and how would you handle it in the moment? So we're sort of preparing them mentally for this unfamiliar environment that they may be stepping into. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do as also an educator or a coach, but also as a support system at home, is really encourage your performance athlete to set goals that they are in control of. The minute they set a goal that is not within their control, you're stressing out even more, because there's no way that you can guarantee that you're going to win platinum or win gold, right? That's up to somebody else. But what you can work towards and feel better about is, I have a goal of staying present during my performance. I have a goal of XYZ. Putting it within your own control is really can help a lot. Feeling in control, right, of what is stressing you out. And there's actually been studies about people with that self-identify as having a growth mindset. And growth mindset does that. You stress process over product, right? So it's not about winning. It's more about the focusing and the work of getting to that point of performing. There was a study done with people where they were told, you're going to give a speech in front of 100 people in 5 minutes about something that you don't know anything about. And because they're all human, their stress levels went up, and that's normal. Then they divided the group into people who said they had growth mindsets, who look at challenges as something they can overcome, right? Because they're pretty confident in their ability to learn. Then they looked, and the other group was people who I identified as fixed mindset, who thought talent was something that was given. If it's not easy, you just don't have it, etc.
Mm-hmm.
After about 20 minutes, those who identified as growth mindset, their levels of cortisol had gone down considerably. Those who identified as fixed mindset were still just as stressed out as they were 20 minutes prior.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find the confidence in yourself, if you can see a challenge as something that you can overcome, and you feel like you have control somewhat over a situation, chances are that stress that you feel will eventually dissipate, which is the goal that we're always after.
Michelle,
The cat agrees.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hi, kitty.
Yeah, the cat totally agrees with that, and so do I. So I definitely agree with that. Please use these strategies, everyone. We need them. I know I'm going to use them. So stress is not a new thing. We've been stressed for years and years upon years and years, and so have our students. But do you think that there's a difference in the type of stress or the amount of stress that our performance athletes today are seeing versus what they may have been seeing or experiencing 10 or 20 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a combination, right? So the great thing is we're starting to recognize it. We have words for it right now, like 30 years ago, I don't even know we would have recognized if we were stressed. We would have just thought something was wrong with us, and we,
Mm-hmm.
weren't good at handling a lot of things. So the good thing is that we now understand what is stress, like what is anxiety, what is depression, what is like mental health, like the fact that we're talking about mental health, like we said, it's great, we move forward. But young athletes and pretty much all performance athletes, all like are being held to a higher and higher and higher standard. And especially if you're looking at like kids in high school, if they are athletes and then they are held to a higher and higher academic level, it's becoming more and more competitive. I believe that the levels of stress are significantly higher. And I think that these coping mechanisms are much more important now than they even were a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
post COVID.
Yeah.
And now that information is shared so quickly, and you look at your palm and you can see 20 examples of someone who's better than you, right, or that you perceive is better than you're holding yourself to a higher standard.
Mm-hmm.
Because you feel the pressure of comparing yourself to all of these people that you follow on social media, that you see
That
on
is
TikTok, that you see
that
on
is hands
Instagram.
down the number one reason that's got to be that stress has got to have gone up that much in so many years. Like I am terrified for my kids to get a phone. I mean, and I am gonna push to hold out on that. I mean, they're only 9 and 7 and 9 and 6 right now, but my God, like kids are walking around with phones at that age, no problem. And my husband and I are going to resist every step of the way until we can't resist anymore. But because it's so, once they get that social media presence and they get a taste of that, there is no coming back from that. You can't, we never had that. I think,
No,
God,
I
I'm
couldn't
dating
imagine.
myself, but I'm probably the last generation that didn't, I mean, we didn't have that. I think Facebook came out or MySpace or something when
We were in
when I got
college.
married.
I was in
Yeah, or when
college.
I was in
Yeah.
college. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't have that to look back on, like a constant reminder of like all the dumb things we did. And, I didn't have to grow up. I did that enough comparing myself to other people. I didn't need help from social media. Right. And now they have that everywhere they go.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
it's rough. And people can
yeah,
curate themselves too. That's the other thing. Like we used to see all the dumb stuff that people did, and we saw people fell in the middle of the hallway, or we did.
absolutely.
These kids can curate the most beautiful and gorgeous moments of their lives, and the best outfits that they wear, and the days that they have no pimples, and they can put them on Instagram or
And
Facebook
use
and
filters.
use
I
filters.
Filters,
mean,
they can
that's not
edit.
even, it's not even real. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
there's
Not,
so many
most of it
editing
isn't even real.
features. Yeah, they can just edit out the parts that they don't like and create this whole realm that doesn't even exist in real life, but you think that it does, right? So really is so dangerous in that regard, and I can imagine how it's affected everybody. If you are just joining us, we are talking with Michelle Loucadoux and Kristin Deiss of Danscend, which is an organization that provides mental health resources for dancers and performance athletes. We're going to talk about how you can access the resources at Danscend here in a minute. But now we are going to get into homework, Melissa, our
Yes, it's
favorite time.
homework time. That's what we love to do. So each week, we ask our expert guests to give our viewers one thing that they can do between now and the next show, which is next Friday, to improve in this area. So I'm going to go to each one of you. I'll start with Michelle.
So I know that often I am too stressed to do things to make myself not stressed, if that makes sense. Like I'm too busy to even stop down. So this is one of the ways your phone is helpful. I have 2 alarms set on my phone, one in the morning and one in kind of the late afternoon. And it goes off and it just says stop, like in caps with exclamation points. So
Mm.
whatever I'm doing, I stop, I turn on my Headspace app and do a 5-minute meditation.
Oh,
So the
wow.
easiest, thing you can do for homework, maybe even just set one of those alarms for yourself. And when that alarm goes off, don't be like, oh my God, I'm too busy. Oh my God, I have to finish this email. Oh my God, I have to, get the cat off the desk. You know what I mean? Like just stop. Whatever you're doing,
I love
just
that.
probably can stop for 5 minutes.
5-minute meditation. And you mentioned Headspace. That's an app like a Calm app or
Mm-hmm.
those things that have guided meditations that are in it. If you don't have those apps, can't you find those things on like YouTube and for
Totally.
free? Yeah.
So many meditations on YouTube, or you can just sit calmly and notice your breath and breathe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Kristen, what's your homework?
I would say every evening before you go to sleep for the next 7 days, write down 2 things. Start with this one first because you don't want to go to sleep in this mindset. Start with what stressed me out the most today. Where was I? What was I doing? Who was I with?
Mm-hmm.
Try to note all of that. And then the second thing is, when did I feel the least stress today? And do the same thing. What was I doing? Where was I? Who was I with? And after 7 days, you might start to find a pattern that can help you begin to really alleviate the things in your life that are maybe not helping you. Or you say, okay, look, this is something that clearly stresses me out on a daily basis. how can I make this better for myself? So a little reflection every evening.
I love both of those. So we need a notepad here. We need a notepad and alarm. Everybody's got an alarm on their phone, or all the time. You can get them at the dollar store now, the $1.25 store, because everything there is $1.25 now, not a dollar. But you get little timers there, so you can set your stop alarms, and then you can also do kind of a journal at night of what stressed you out the most and what stressed where you were the least stressed. And when you find those patterns, actually do something about them instead of just kind of letting them ride out. So thank you so much for that homework. We have homework. YPAD certification is so very, very helpful to our dance educator community out there. We have a 25% off code, Apollo25, all caps, to get 25% off of your YPAD courses. So please check that out. Also, Kristin and Michelle from Danscend have a free ebook. Free. That's free. That means no dollars. That means money's not a stressor for this ebook. So please, Bree is dropping that in the chat. Take advantage of that. They have so graciously given us the link for you to be able to download that free ebook. So please do that. We want people to be able to get in touch with you because I know you guys do consults and workshops and have classes. So how can people get in touch with you and or Danscend?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, danscend.com, Danscend. That has everything that we're about, how we curate our resources through our advisory board of mental health professionals. Or you can go check us out on Instagram at Danscend Official. We're on LinkedIn at Danscend. We're on Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere. There are a few videos on YouTube as well if you want to learn more about our workshops or about what we do.
Awesome. And you guys have something coming up in January, right? Do you want to share that? What do you have coming up?
So we have what's called Danscend's Council for Educators. And right now it's about 108 dance educators from literally around the world. And we talk about a different topic every week in relation to dancer mental wellness and health. So we are starting it again in January. Each week we have either a special guest on a topic, or Kristin and I present. We give you a worksheet to use with your dancers in the classroom. And then we send a very long list of sources and resources if you want to learn more. So Danscend's Council for Educators, you can join as an individual educator, or we also have a number of entire dance studios who are doing this process together, learning together, and then sharing it with their dancers. Yeah.
That is awesome. I am really proud of you guys for doing that. I think that's so great that you're giving so much of your time and energy to providing that for people. And where can they go to sign up for that?
You can go to danscend.com. Right now, it will open up actually later today. So we are opening up pre-sale we start January 2nd is our first special guest. We're having Dr. Kristin Donaldson will be joining us and talking to our educators. So as of 4 hours from now, you can go to danscend.com and sign up, and you'll be able to start January 2nd.
That's awesome. And what a great new way to start the new year. You're starting it with a fresh mental attitude, fresh perspective, and then you're going to go watch Beyond the Steps on Friday, and you're going to have all kinds of stuff that's going to rock your world. So we encourage you to mark your calendar and start the new year off with Michelle and Kristin at Danscend. Again, you want to check them out at danscend.com. They are doing amazing things for the dance community and beyond. So check them out. You will not be sorry. We are going to be here every Friday on Beyond the Steps at 2 p.m. Eastern. We have lots of things planned. We're turning Beyond the Steps into a blog. We're turning it into a podcast in 2023. So we just don't have enough to do. We just thought we'd pile on our plate, but we're so excited. And so you're going to be able to see us in many, many ways. We want to keep spreading the word and getting this information out there. So please like, subscribe, follow, share these conversations with people in your community. That's the only way we're going to get it out there. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. So be sure to follow us on all of those platforms as well. Next week, Friday, we are back with Emily Bufford, and we're going to be talking to Emily about the difference. What are the pros and cons about training at the college level for a sport or with dance and dance, I should say, or other sports, or pursuing professional career right out of high school. And she has some great perspective on that. She's a educator in New York City. She's been doing it for a long time. She's also the director and founder of Young Choreographers Festival, which is a fantastic platform. We'll get into that next week. We hope you join us. Until then, you have lots of homework to keep you busy, and we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. We will see you next week, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Melissa and Bree, for all the work that you do too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, guys. Thank you very, very much. We'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.